Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
I can't wait for you all to hear the dad joke that Brad just made. And it's going to have to wait until the prospect profile. We weren't planning on this being the opening to the episode, but it was just too good. Oh my God, Brad. You also bailed out Evan because I was going to open with, of all episodes of the Winged Wheel podcast, it feels like this one is yours to open, Evan.
We're a golf podcast now.
Oh my God. We're recording about 3 hours later than we usually do. Final round of the Masters. We understood what we were all watching, so we were like, okay, we'll wait until the round is over. And then 45,000 heart attacks later.
I've aged terribly. I feel 10 years older. I probably sound 10 years older too. That's insanity. That
probably set the record for most active texts sent back and forth between you and I that wasn't about the podcast.
I know.
During that round.
Crazy.
I messaged Evan before the 18th hole. I said, I'm putting away my phone for the 18th. 2 minutes later, I was texting him again. Put it into the bunker.
Unbelievable.
Remember the old days of the Winged Wheel podcast where Brad, you and I used to have to tell Evan to stop talking about golf so we can get to the hockey part?
I remember that. And then one of us dove hard into the addiction.
One of us was weak. I have bad news for you, brother. I played pickleball with him last week. It was fun. I bought shoes.
Yeah, I know when you get into something, you get all in on something. I see the Masters hat. I see the Masters shirt. Like, you're very on brand.
Just trying to will it into existence.
My job here is done.
He dissolves into thin air. Fitting timing, though, again, same way we made the same joke last episode, as the Red Wings season comes to an end, but doesn't mean the news comes to an end. So we actually have a good bit to talk to you about here today. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, not a golf podcast, a Detroit Red Wings podcast, a hockey podcast, NHL podcast. Here to talk to you about all that and more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking about the fact that the Red Wings are now at 9 straight seasons outside of the playoffs, extending a franchise record, how they got here, a very quick conversation about the past two games, but more so, missing the playoffs, the conversation we've been having for a long time, and then silver linings, because we've done the doom and gloom, and there's going to be a lot of that to come. Marco Kasper is, a skating silver lining for the Red Wings right now, and we're going to be discussing whether he could be the answer for 2C in that position for the Red Wings moving forward. And then more excitement as the Initialism kids, MBN and ASP, are making their way over to North America. Huge boost incoming for the Grand Rapids Griffins and for Red Wings fans to be watching. NHL news, a prospect profile, and more before we jump into overtime. Before all that, very quickly, the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to benefits like our Patreon exclusive Discord, which not only has hockey channels and is an amazing community. It replicated the Light the Lamp thing that FanDuel Sports Detroit does. There's also a golf channel where you'll catch Evan hanging out. There's a pets channel, which I was told to advertise more readily because that's probably the best vibes in the entire Red Wings world. Is the WWP Pets channel. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. You get bloopers. You get thoughts with Evan. We let loose, have fun, answer any questions that didn't make the main show, all that and more. You're also automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, we give away 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game going directly to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. 98-year history of the franchise or so. 9 years extending the franchise record outside of the playoffs. It's official. Detroit is out. Montreal gained enough points to make it mathematically impossible for Detroit to do it. And the Red Wings are on the outside looking in again. This has been a slow death. We've been seeing it coming. There have been moments where you're like, oh, maybe they'll come back and do it. It's essentially the inverse of what Rory was doing all day today, especially on the second 9 there. But thoughts on the fact that it's now official and where this season is landing for the Red Wings?
There was a stretch in this team's history where there was a long period of time where they referred to as the Dead Wings. And this streak is longer than that. It's hard to reconcile just how bad it is in terms of that. Now, couple years of them getting pretty close, and I think both years, if you take all context out of the equation and you go, they're not getting eliminated till the last day of the season and then subsequently April 12th, you go, okay, those are probably at least productive seasons. We can see some silver linings there, and there definitely are a lot. But the way this season went makes it hard to really focus on the silver linings, though there are many. But yeah, it's tough. It's hard to stomach. Like, I mean, we've been mentally preparing for this for like 3-4 weeks now. Like, as much as we tried to remain optimistic, the math has been bad for a while. And the way things were going and the way the Red Wings were playing, it didn't look like they were going to be the Tigers of last year and math be damned, get in. So yeah, it's tough. It sucks. You know, there's a need for changes in the offseason, but again, this isn't the episode for a referendum on everything they need to do, but yeah, it sucks.
The season's been a very strange one. We go from one coach to another. We see a team that goes from non-existent to then having life. But at the end of it, it has so many parallels to the previous season, with just a last-ditch effort, but not quite enough to make the playoffs, and having the pillow fight right before the end of the season with, 20, 15, 10 games remaining to just not seize the opportunity. It's really hard to put into words how this season feels and where the Red Wings are now being mathematically eliminated, because you have the expectations, rightfully or wrongfully, from last year just missing out. The Red Wings basically are on life support at the end of December, and then all of a sudden they're this brand new team. They've found their game. Players are starting to play with a purpose and for each other, and then the season just kind of repeats itself from last year. So I think I leave this season with more questions than answers than I did at game one of the season. But there are still some bright spots. I think, recently Marco Kasper has been doing his 2023-2024 version of Lucas Raymond. I don't think I ever saw that coming. And we've seen emergence from other young players as well. Simon Edvinsson really got thrust into a role that maybe he wasn't ready for, and he really seized that opportunity. Anton Johansson was absolutely thrown above his weight class and put in a position where it was unlikely he would succeed. And I thought he had a very admirable first year in the NHL. There are some bright spots to end the season, but at the end of the day, fans want to see their team in the playoffs, and the Red Wings weren't able to do that once again.
Yeah, before I dive into it, that last line, Evan, is exactly it. Like, there's no version of this that you can go out and seriously tell a Red Wings fan, whether they're a diehard or a casual fan, and say, yeah, you have to feel okay or happy with this. That's just not the reality of it. No fan should love to miss the playoffs 9 years in a row. There's context as to how they ended up here. There's, you can needlepoint and litigate and relitigate mistakes by the front office and Steve Yzerman and coaching, and there were plenty. And you could also do the same thing for what those guys inherited from the Ken Holland era. And we're far removed from it, but it's also not nothing still. But at the end of the day, losing sucks, missing the playoffs sucks, and now being so close, come March, how many years in a row now? There's no way it feels good. On the season part of it, before I get to takeaways, on the season part of it, I think they ended up where this team likely should have been. And that's because I think the holes that they had in their lineup were just too great. I think they definitely weren't as bad of a team as when they were, at their lowest lows under Derek Lalonde, but I also don't think they were 2 7-game win streak talent level teams, right? So I see that defense, I see the lack of scoring depth, and I'm like, yeah, this is the outcome on balance. But that doesn't take away from the fact that, if they had a different schedule, and I'm not making excuses, they had the schedule they had and they lost plenty of winnable games. But if they had a different schedule, or, if the coaching change was made sooner, or a couple other, key moments, a save had been made or whatever it is, you could have been looking at a different outcome. But you look at this team on paper, you're like, yeah, this makes sense. It's a team that's too good to be at the absolute bottom, but not good enough, more likely than not, to make the playoffs. And again, we're going to do a season recap and everything. My takeaway, though, is that the calculus on this team for me hasn't changed. I think the silver linings that Evan mentioned are absolutely right. And we're going to be talking more about Marco Kasper in a bit here, but the calculus on this team hasn't changed. You now know more about the impact moves around your core can make. Your core and their contracts are still set, but you still have the same holes we were talking about last offseason that we said were likely to persist through the year, which is you do need to make another big move somehow, be it trade, be it free agency, be it, draft absolute diamond in the rough, whatever it is, or a combination of those things. This team needs more high-end talent to ascend to the next level. And unless you're reshaping this blue line completely, there's still going to be a defensive liability. So I try not to get too wrapped up in the doldrums of like, yeah, we missed for the 9th straight year, or the Red Wings are so screwed. No, but the work ahead still has to be done now, and the runway is now a year shorter than it was last offseason.
Yeah, I think the point you made there about moves still have to be made is the key one to keep in mind going into this offseason. And not that there's a timeline on it. I think I, along with many others, are getting to the point of impatience that we want it to happen this offseason. And I think if they want to make the playoffs next year, it probably has to be this offseason. But again, keeping the bigger picture in mind, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen this year. Because I've seen a lot of optimism flying around the Red Wings online sphere, which is great. And people are super excited up at the prospect pool and going, well, look at all these guys that are in the system that will be up in 2, 3, 4 years and what that roster will look like, which is great. And the prospect pool is awesome. And that's a great sentiment. But lost in that discourse is ceilings and likelihood. Yeah, ASP, Lombardi, Finnie, Danielson, Cossa, Mazur, new Johansson, Bouillon. There's a lot of things to be optimistic about. Not all those guys are going to make the NHL. Very few of those guys are going to hit their actual ceiling. The biggest holes on this roster are top 6 forward, probably 2, but we'll just, for the sake of argument, say 1, and top 4 defensemen. Those are likely going to have to come externally. Because as great as Danielson is, he's not going to be a superstar level player. As great as Bouillon and righty Johansson are, they're not going to be superstars. They're not going to be top pair defensemen. Probably even second pair defensemen's a reach. Buchelnikov's not going to come over and score 50 goals in the NHL.
He's going to score 70.
That's right.
Exactly.
He's going to be everything that Montreal fans think Demidov is.
So the benefit of this super deep prospect pool is that even if only half of them pan out, that's enough. That's a lot of key players who are going to contribute in your roster. But externally, things need to be done. There needs to be fat trimmed from this roster this offseason, and a lot of these prospects are not going to be ready to come in and take those spots. Again, there's no Mitch Marner and Nikolai Ehlers in this system. They got to go find one. And again, same with the top 4 defensemen. So the Red Wings are in a very good spot, to Ryan's point, for the long-term future. I still have huge questions about the short-term future. And then there could be debates, however you want, about how heavy of a priority should that be. And then, yeah, you got to keep drafting, developing, and plug a couple holes while you're doing it.
It's really hard to manage fan expectation in all of this, right? Like, sure, there's been 2 regime changes in the 9 years of no playoffs, but and people try to divide that and dissect it into, this is only year 5 of the Yzerman rebuild, or the year we've had 4 years of the Holland rebuild. But for fans, it's a decade. So at some point, the impatience begins, and I know it already has at some level. So it's very difficult to manage the future and the long-term success while also not falling behind, the other teams in your division. I think one thing that really makes the end of this season difficult is the fact that the Montreal Canadiens have passed the Red Wings. Whether you think they've passed them in the rebuild or in the long term, I think that's very much up for debate. But right now, as the Red Wings stand, they have been passed by not only Ottawa, but the Montreal Canadiens. And I think that's not nothing from an emotional standpoint.
100% agree. And I know, Brad, you talked about that last episode as well. And frankly, I might say in the past, like, this is the path that the Red Wings and Yzerman chose by kind of not tanking even further. The more I go on, the more I'm like, I think there's a floor to this team just based on the talent that they got from the Seider and the Raymond drafts and the fact that they have Larkin. Barring selling everyone other than Seider and Raymond, including Larkin, they were never going to tank again. But I think this is just the reality of being a mushy middle team. And that doesn't change. It doesn't make an excuse, though. You're right. Like, emotionally for fans, that sucks to watch Montreal go and do it. It sucks to watch the Senators, who is the newfound rival of the Red Wings through this, hopefully coming out of the rebuild phase, especially between the fandoms, they make it, right?
It's going to be really hard for some Red Wings fans to watch the playoffs and see the pesky Sens go up against their cross-province rivals in the Toronto Maple Leafs, or watch Montreal sweep the Capitals.
Oh God, don't. Yeah, if they're already, they posted a practice clip of Demidov missing the net, and they were talking about how did this guy fall to 5. I was like, oh, Montreal fans never change. I love you. You're all lunatics.
He could have walked out there with his skate guards on. It wouldn't have changed their opinion on that video.
5D chess moves.
I thought
masterful gambit, sir.
I thought when you posted that in the group chat, you legitimately posted the wrong video. I'm like, there's no way that's like, don't get me wrong, Demidov's sick. Like, they have every reason to be excited. They literally posted a video of him stepping out on the ice, stick handling a little bit, putting it through his own legs, and then ripping a shot high and wide. Literally, Mika and Hank can do that. Literally. And they're like, nope, how'd this guy fall to 5th? I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You think it's insufferable now.
Yeah. They ruined Lane Hudson for us. Oh.
He's a Michigan kid.
Buckle up about what's going to happen to Demidov. One of the most fun players outside of the NHL to watch. And now 90% of the hockey world is going to be rooting for his failure, which is completely unfair to him.
To your point further, Evan, like, yeah, you're going to feel pressure as an organization because you're like, I know I could have made moves to get there. Like, you were within a margin of error. I maintain that. The Red Wings are within a margin of error of a wild card spot, even if it's just one wild card spot.
They could have been Washington this year, and that's a bold statement to say they could be the Washington of this year, but they make the playoffs, get swept by the Rangers last year.
Oh, last year's Washington. I was going to say.
Yeah. Last year's, they get swept. Maybe they go into last off season saying, we just saw 4 games from our young players. We're ready to hit the gas pedal, and they make the big free agent signings.
But something that you said earlier in the day, Brad, before we started recording, and to your point, Evan, of you don't want to, make the wrong move just because you feel the urgency is, imagine the Red Wings made the Kasper trade of the teams that were gunning for Kasper, like the Cousins-Kasper deal that was kind of floating there and never materialized. That would have been a nightmare now. Like, imagine Kasper being a near 20, or hopefully he ends the season with 20 goals, but wearing the Buffalo Sabres crest. You'd be like, oh my God.
That doesn't happen when you go to Buffalo.
Yeah,
you lose all hockey ability.
They actually take 5 goals off your tally when you go there.
Yeah.
But it's a mushy middle for them in the standings, and it's a mushy middle emotionally and rationally. And yeah, I'm not going to say it's worse than the lowest lows. We just pointed to when the Red Wings had Adam Ernie leading the team with like 11 goals or whatever it was. Like, that was worse, but this is a tough part of the road.
I think it's the most confusing time to be a Red Wings fan. I have all day to listen to everybody on both ends of the debate on, the Red Wings should have tanked, or they're doing this. Oh, well, there's all these prospects coming up. This team has a bright future. It's just a really tough time to be a Red Wings fan because you're still curious as when is this team going to really pop off?
Well, this is going to be the never-ending debate until we get through the draft and free agency this summer, because I think most fans, myself included, would sit there and go, it's time to hit the gas pedal. You have to go out there, get a Marner, get an Ehlers, get a Marchand, get a Tavares. But if they all say no, the answer is not to go overpay Sam Bennett or whoever the next tier of free agents is. At that point, you probably are better off. All right, this wasn't our summer. We just got to run it back. And that sucks. And everybody who's listening just flinched. I know I did in my head. But that you got to understand.
The guy punching his laptop.
Yeah.
That's them punching Brad's face on their screen right now.
Because there is a reality where no moves is the right moves. But that's only if you keep striking out on actual good moves.
Maybe that's where a little bit of transparency would go a long way in the media with Steve Yzerman and co. You know, at the end of the free agent frenzy and all the big fish have signed elsewhere, be like, we were in on all of them. They just didn't want to come here. Okay, well then that expectations have now been set. We understand. You went out there, you tried, it didn't work. Let's look at plan B and plan C.
I think he's hinted towards that in the past, and you know, we've kind of gotten notions of that through things that have been whispered in the past, but yeah, it's tough because everyone's like, just why didn't you go out and sign or trade for Rantanen? And you're like, well, you found out later Rantanen had like 4 teams that he was willing to go to or whatever it was. Yeah, it's complicated. No, we talked about the silver linings, and I think that's what we should talk about now. The 2 games the Red Wings have played, the first one was a 4-1 loss to Florida, wherein Alex DeBrincat scored his 36th goal of the year, and the second one was a 4-3 overtime winner, a comeback overtime winner, where Marco Kasper scored twice, including the game winner. And from that, there are a couple storylines. First is, can Alex DeBrincat hit 40 and be the first 40 goal scorer since Marian Hossa? He's already the first 35 goal scorer since Marian Hossa. And can Marco Kasper hit 20 goals? He's had 18, and he's got a few games left. Can he make it? Because the Red Wings, we'll talk about their lottery position in a second here. Actually, very quickly, they are 11th in lottery standings right now, which means they have the most outside shot of any team who could technically get first overall, because remember, you can only move up 10 spots, but they're bunched up with, you know, a bunch of other teams. At the time of recording, the Red Wings have 3 games left. They have 81 points. Just below them in the standings are the Rangers with 81. They have 2 games left. The Ducks with 78 points, 3 games remaining. They're not going to move too much further down if they are. And then just above them, the Islanders, 82 points, but 2 games remaining. The Blue Jackets, 83 points, 3 games remaining. I believe they're playing as we speak, though. So the Red Wings have a range here. They're not really going to get to a likelihood of winning first overall, but they could still be in position to technically have a shot of winning first overall. All of that aside, DeBrincat, 40 goal chase, Kasper, 20 goal chase. Do either of them do it?
I mean, they're the 2 players on the Red Wings who have the most signs of life right now. I would say Marco Kasper has been the best player for the Detroit Red Wings outside of Alex DeBrincat for, God, it feels like the past 15, 20 games almost.
Since 4 Nations.
Yeah, that's a great barometer for that. I think for sure Marco Kasper can hit 20. Can DeBrincat get, 4 more in 3 games? He's certainly capable of doing it. They're playing good teams, so we'll see. They might try and shut some guys down a little bit here, but
Elmer Soderblom shut down for the season.
Big move for the tank. Big move for the tank.
Unironically, kind of.
That's how the season's going. But yeah, we need some optimism right now. I'll say at least one of them hit their milestones.
Well, if they average 2 goals a game for the final 3, that gets them to 6 goals. As long as that's split, 4 to DeBrincat, 2 to Kasper, which mathematically is the most likely scenario right now because nobody else on this team is scoring.
Patrick Kane better be doing a lot of passing the next 3 games.
And you know how hockey players are. They know these games mean nothing, but they know there's not nothing on the line. This is a much, much smaller degree, but you saw Washington players force-feeding Ovechkin the puck for a few games here. I wouldn't be shocked if that's happening for DeBrincat and Kasper here in these final few games.
Every power play.
I'll be watching Marco Kasper to see additional power play time, how his time on ice adjusts over the next little bit here. I'd imagine Todd McLellan's that kind of guy who would give those players those opportunities.
And McLellan's been rightly singing Kasper's praises. And I think the takeaway is for the whole season that Kasper's the biggest revelation. My question is he a confident answer for you that the Red Wings actually have at a bare minimum, sufficient, like league sufficient 2C option behind Dylan Larkin for next season. Because at the start of it, I was thinking,
He's a
okay,
1C right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was about to get into this big dialogue about, okay, well, if you're a cup contender in 5 years, where would he have next year? Obviously, yes.
yeah, and like
obviously, yes.
and that's a revelation because even Marco Kasper's like biggest fans, and there have been some people who I've been talking to from the start who are like, I promise you, the offense you're seeing is going to translate up. It will be there, and they were right. Even I don't think they were expecting a 20 goal or near 20 goal season when he wasn't even on the roster to start the year for Detroit.
Yeah, and obviously the offensive upside is a huge bonus. I think we all knew there was offense there, but not, like you said, not 20 goals in the rookie season. Like, so the fact he's already doing it's a huge, how like you project a player and then something new happens and the projection gets higher. That's where we're at with him now. But I was also looking at some of the underlying defensive metrics for Kasper earlier this week. He's up there with the elite of the elite Selke contending forwards in terms of defensive impact. As a rookie, while almost scoring 20 goals. Like, genuinely, I think the conversation needs to shift is Kasper the 2C if you're winning a cup. Because the answer now is maybe.
Well, I've become the person I've made fun of for a long time for saying this thing, but he plays the game the right way. He plays playoff style hockey. He is like a coach's dream kind of player to a T, and he's not a secret anymore. We talked about, teams asked about him all trade deadline and leading up to it, and obviously he was what the conversation was around were for Cousins. Him or Danielson were names that were coming up. I've had it suggested to me that there were multiple other teams that were in on him, and it was a staunch no from Detroit because they know what they have in Kasper. And this was what the high end of Kasper's projections were at the time of him being drafted. I remember Ottawa really wanted Kasper that year. Things didn't shake out that way, and Detroit ended up taking him. Like, this is what people saw in this player, and I mean, my God, if he turned into this after a few years, you're like, wow, that is a fantastic development result for Marco Kasper. But the fact that he's already showing you that he can do this in his rookie season, not that he's never going to have a downward trend. Remember, the sophomore slump affects most rookies. But yeah, him demonstrating this ability, I agree. It's an obvious answer, and it's yes for Detroit, barring something changing.
Now, that should not preclude them from signing a high-end center if one becomes available for whatever that's worth. It doesn't mean they should be out on the market, but it does make it a lot easier because if you sign a John Tavares, you can go, okay, well, we're just going to play him on wing. Like, that solves that problem, right? Like, so having options is huge. So just because we're sitting here and saying, yes, Marco Kasper is absolutely a number 2C, does not kill the market for the Red Wings. You're always looking for upgrades. You're always looking for options. You're always looking for flexibility.
No, and the thing is with slotting at forward too, you move guys up and down as you find chemistry, and guys get hot, guys get cold. Young players who might project to be centers sometimes need some time at wing, and like Brad said, players who are older, you can keep their career and their production alive at time by putting them on the right wing, or the correct wing of the right centerman kind of thing. And so you want options. You never have too much of a good thing in the NHL. If you have too many good centermen, great. You now have the most attractive trade pool out of anyone else in the league. It's not a thing that happens. It's like I have way too many high-end right shot D-men. It's not, no one has that issue.
Yeah, like if you go out and get a Tavares or a Sam Bennett or a whoever, and then all of a sudden Nate Danielson has a really good camp, and now you also have Marco Kasper, you're not shoehorning Danielson into a scenario where he's going to get killed. He can slot in as the 3C, give him the shot there with Soderblom and Comfer, who the hell ever. And you've got, let's call it John Tavares playing left wing with Kasper and Raymond. And then Danielson struggles. Okay, well, now you can kick him to wing, bring that centerman you have playing wing down to play that role, and all of a sudden, you're not screwed, even though something went wrong. Because we saw that happen with the Red Wings this year. Andrew Kopp is no longer an above-average NHLer. And when he went down, it was devastating to that forward group because they had not a single other player who could plug that hole. Yeah, Kasper was a revelation, but they had to kick him off the first line to take that role on the second line. And he did it exceptionally, but then that hole on the first line was a problem for the rest of the season. So options, flexibility, and yes, having Marco Kasper emerge is the key to all of that.
I'll contend that Andrew Kopp is not an above average NHLer where they were deploying him.
That's
and
fair.
Relative to his contract. I still think he settled into some kind of rhythm pretty nicely under McLellan. It's been a roller coaster ride. But no, you're exactly right. Like, it is what we talked about before. You shouldn't have a house of cards, period. And if the card that crumbles your tower is, Andrew Kopp, that like you never had a tower to start. It was always going to fall over because if it wasn't Andrew Kopp, then it was going to be someone else. The good news about this is, you remember how we were talking about coming into this season, what the biggest boost would be for the Red Wings, which was a full year of Simon Edvinsson. Now we have that same thing again. We had a good chunk of the season with Marco Kasper, but you now have a full year of Marco Kasper who's had his rookie season and can make an even bigger impact. And so the Red Wings have already baked in an improvement for next season. Some people might be like, oh my God, guys, you are trying to draw optimism out of nowhere, but this one's real. Like the Kasper thing is real. And I promise you in league circles as well, people are raving about this guy.
Well, if people want us to go full doomer, we can do that. It's very easy.
No.
But it was a point we beat to absolute death last offseason. And not that we ever give ourselves credit because we don't deserve any, but this is one where we were absolutely right in the sense that we pushed Johansson, Edvinsson, and Kasper need to play a majority of the season, not only because they're good players and they'd help the team, but now you know what you have in them. Nobody's going into next season feeling like those guys can't handle a decent workload or can't fill a significant role. So now is anybody in Red Wings world, management, fandom, coaching, whatever, worried about bringing in a Danielson or a Wallinder or a Sandin Pellikka? Because these guys aren't rookies anymore. They don't feel like rookies. You're not worried about having this group of 6 rookies on the team going, man, that's going to be a hell of a learning curve. It opens up the options to now, if they punt a Hall, they punt a Tarasenko, they punt a Gustafsson, I don't know, pick whoever the heck you want to get off this roster. There's a lot of candidates. And they only sign 50% worth of those players in free agency. You're not sitting here going, oh, well, we're in trouble now.
Well, let us know what you think. Marco Kasper, is he the 2C answer in the short, medium, and or long term? So I'm sorry, I couldn't go by without doing another Masters analogy, but think of having options at center like Rory had putts to win the Masters. Because I'll tell you, when it was one, it didn't work out the first time. That's our cue. We're going to go to a quick break here to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. And when we're back, more on Red Wings prospect pipeline and excitement there. Back after this. What can happen in 3 to 6 months? You could pick up a new hobby and get not that good at it yet. You could make a push for the playoffs like you do every year, only to fall apart in March again like you do every year. Or you can start seeing thicker, fuller hair regrowth through Hims. That's not bad for just 3 to 6 months. Look, hair loss is something most guys deal with, especially as we get older, and I'm definitely not immune to it. That's why we love how easy Hims makes it. You don't have to deal with awkward doctor visits or sit around in a waiting room. Everything is online and it's fast. They use real, clinically proven ingredients, and the treatments can be personalized to what works best for you. Whether it's chewables, oral meds, sprays, or serums, Hims helps you figure out the right fit. You just answer a few quick questions, a licensed medical provider reviews it, and if treatment is right for you, it gets sent straight to your door. No hassle, no weird pharmacy runs, just consistent, reliable treatment that can get your hair looking thicker and fuller over time. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/wingedwheel. That's HIMS.com/wingedwheel for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/wingedwheel. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Axel, Sandin, Pellikka, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, they're on their way to Michigan. Skellefteå is out in the SHL, and these guys, wouldn't make it in time for the Red Wings season, but they are going to make it in time to boost the Grand Rapids Griffins, which is huge. I just have to get one thing out of the way, and this is a freebie for both of you to make fun of me, by the way. I don't often readily do this. They are not the acronym kids. They are the initialism kids. An acronym is when you can use the letters to make a word, like NASA, where Evan works. But if you just, read out each letter, like ASP, that's an initialism. That is my dweeb moment. You two take over. What does this mean for the Griffins and the Red Wings organization?
So the best way to talk about this in relation to the conversation we just had is it's going to give more context and clues. How does ASP or ASP, if you want to go with your acronym?
Shut up.
How does my ASP look?
We're about to find out, Evan.
And that's our episode, folks. You take care.
Offensively gifted ASP.
That's Patreon exclusive content for the folks
No
right
kidding.
there. That's what happens when we record after dark.
But yeah, it'll give some context and clues as to, are they real contenders to crack the lineup next year? Are they going to need a full year in Grand Rapids, which is the likely scenario before anybody gets ahead of themselves? And for their sake, it's going to acclimatize them to North American ice, the smaller game. And as it's getting closer to AHL playoffs, they're not getting eased in. This is going to be high intensity, hard hockey. Can they handle it? Obviously, there's probably some expectation of jet lag and exhaustion after the seasons they had between World Juniors and 2 rounds of SHL playoffs and all the other stuff that comes with that. But still, there's value here. Even if they don't crush it, it's a new scenario, a new reality, a new type of hockey. See how they do with it.
Also just good for the fan base. I mean, obviously it would have been better to see them down the stretch for the Red Wings, but I also think the fan base needs something. They've been watching a very crummy death to the season play out in slow motion when they had opportunities to crawl out of it. But like you guys said before the break, the team just never rose to the task. They just weren't cut out for it this year. So this is a freebie for the fans to say, hey, these are 2 guys. One of them, I think, at least has an outside shot of making the team, if not a little bit better than maybe we give him credit for, who's really exciting. And MBN, I mean, I know the stats don't really back it up, and there was moments in the season where you're like, he kind of needs to pick it up, but it's early in his development. And the more I talk to people, the more they're like, no, the tools are still all there, and the ceiling is still there for him to have his shot be a lethal weapon for this team. So these aren't, lower end prospects. These aren't prospects where if they hit and reach something closer to their ceilings, they'll be down the lineup. These will be impact players. And so, yeah, you get to see it a bit sooner. Grand Rapids gets to make a push now in the playoffs, and you get a little sneak preview for next season.
Nice little reward for Grand Rapids, not only the organization, but for the fans as well. The Red Wings have relied heavily on the Grand Rapids roster this year to fill the void when injuries occur. So I'm excited for them. It'll be great to see what both those players have left in the tank at the end of the season, and getting them absorbed into the Red Wings Grand Rapids organization sooner is always going to be better.
For Axel, Sandin, Pellikka, he doesn't play small, I'll say that. But it's going to be, as Brad mentioned, it's going to be an adjustment to the North American ice, and it's not easy for a defenseman of his size to come in and be able to do it all right away. I mean, we watched Johansson this season, not because he was playing poorly, but just because the physically dominant game that he was having to go up against quite often, especially a hard-hitting, fast forechecking team. It's hard for a defenseman. He struggled at points. And so for Sandin Pellikka, you don't want to bury the kid by asking him to do too much. That said, I think he has enough talent where you could potentially play around it. I'm not completely ruling it out. I agree with Brad, though. Likely, if you're going to put it, odds on paper, the likely outcome is that he's in Grand Rapids next season. He could surprise. MBN, I'm a little bit more okay, he went back to Europe for this season, and I know he could have chosen Grand Rapids. That was the team's preference. I imagine he'll need some more time to develop there. Nothing's guaranteed. Of course, that qualifier is always there. But Sandin Pellikka, I think, has a shot. You can't rely on him as the answer. Detroit still needs to find a way to have everything behind Seider on the right side not be tragic, or not have to need Johansson play on his offside that well. but he could be an answer.
Yeah, so next season for ASP is the big wild card because, as much as we want to compare them, they were drafted in a similar range. I don't think it's a fair comparison just because I think ASP's skill level's a lot higher. I think he could get into the territory of special talent, which means, maybe, I'm not saying he'll be Lane Hudson or Quinn Hughes next year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he can hang in the NHL on a bottom pair role, run the second power play, put up 30, 40 points. It's not out of reality.
He could literally fill Eric Gustafsson's role and be a huge upgrade.
I would call that likely. Now, for the Red Wings' sake, you want a big upgrade in that spot. But even if Sandin Pellikka is a mild upgrade, that's awesome. But then you got to start asking what's better for his development if he's struggling at 5-on-5, hypothetically. But I think that's would be his role if he was up next year. I think, again, the likely path is he goes to Grand Rapids for a year, runs the top power play, plays big minutes, whatever that looks like. MBN, I think, is very, very likely to play the full year in Grand Rapids. Again, he'll probably play a big role. He played a full year in the SHL, and as we saw with Marco Kasper, that's huge coming over. Even though the ice is different, it's still pro hockey. It's still playing against grown men. So he's not going to be, and especially the way he plays, he's not going to be intimidated by the physicality at all. He's probably excited for it. And I think he's the type of guy who might actually do better on the small ice with the way he plays. Just the talent level's not as high as ASP. So I think MBN season is probably fairly safe to predict in the sense that he'll play a top 6 role on Grand Rapids. You probably expect him to put up half decent numbers, adjust really smoothly, and then ASP, the range of outcomes is wide.
Elsewhere, in terms of players who have gone to the Griffins and demonstrated at least something, Emmitt Finnie and Anton Johansson, both of them have impressed in their own ways. And these are guys who are not, first-round picks. Emmitt Finnie, 7th-round pick. So it's not likely for a guy like that to come in and make an impact. He has from the start, from being drafted. Anton Johansson, a 4th-round pick. We talked about him recently as well. And both of them look like guys. They both look like dudes, and what their timeline, their path is to the Red Wings is, up in the air for sure, and probably destined for more Grand Rapids time. Not saying that they're not, but they both look like guys who have what it takes to potentially make it in the NHL at some point. All this while cautioning what Brad said earlier. If you're drawing up an all Red Wings future roster, it's not really how it works in the NHL, but these guys have both shown enough in their development phases outside of the Red Wings system, to say the least, especially with Finnie. And now that they're with the Griffins, it's going to be fun watching him as it has been to start. So some good news as MBN and ASP are making their way over. All right, let's get into some... Actually, it was not even NHL news. Let's get into some college hockey news before we jump into our prospect profile. Put some respect on Western Michigan's name, us included. The conversation is always Michigan versus Michigan State, and always Michigan State going to win the Natty this year. We obviously talk about Trey Augustine a lot. Pat Ferschweiler, former Red Wings assistant coach, goes back to Western Michigan, leads them to their first ever national championship. What an unreal story as they won 6-2 over BU. Congratulations, Bronco fans. You deserve every single bit of dunking on everyone else for this.
Stories like this are sick. Like, as cool as it is watching powerhouses go up against each other constantly, man, when a team comes out of nowhere like this, puts together the season Western Michigan did, they weren't the most talented team, but just like the hardworking, gritty kids that just come in and they're so good at it. It disrupts everybody else. Like, they didn't just win the Natty. That was 6-2. They laid the boot to BU. Like,
far better team.
Yeah, phenomenal. I watched almost the whole game. It was sick. And, for a town like Kalamazoo to have the Natty.
Hell yeah.
Sick.
I saw a tweet of like many couches are meeting their end as you saw like smoke in the background. I'm like, God, the scenes right now.
Yeah, it's so cool. We are very much getting into the age of powerhouse college teams that will always be a powerhouse college team. And I think with the changes to the CHL NCAA agreement, we're going to see an even greater expansion of those powerhouse teams. So to see a team like Western Michigan, like you guys said, not the most talented on paper, but came together as a team, won for each other, and to see them win, how can you not be happy for them? It truly is incredible. So hats off to them.
As we are able to branch out more and do more, and we do have plans for it, USNTDP, Michigan State, Western Michigan has to be a stop for the show as well. I think it's just so sick. I know Minnesota has the state of hockey moniker, and for good reason. Minnesota's a great hockey state, but it's not just Michigan and Michigan State in the mid. Good for you, Broncos. Speaking of Michigan, the former University of Michigan defenseman Jacob Truscott was signed to a 2-year deal with the Grand Rapids Griffins that starts next season. So for Griffins fans or Red Wings fans who watched Michigan and saw Truscott, they are now going to be able to continue to watch him with the Griffins. So excited to see that develop. He was originally a draft pick of the Vancouver Canucks in 2020, 144th overall pick. So he finishes 5 years at Michigan and then now signs his AHL deal. So he gets his pro deal there. Pretty cool. Let's keep on prospects here. Roger McQueen. Big old question mark on Roger McQueen. He is... Oh, actually, you know what? I'm not even going to give the preamble into it. Brad, say what you said to me before we started the show.
That I'm hoping he gets to Tampa in the draft.
And I said, why? Oh, my God.
I don't get it.
Ka-chow, Evan. Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yep.
There's no way you're still
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now I get it. It's been a long day.
Yeah. Ka-chow. I won't stop saying it. Roger McQueen. Who is he as a prospect? What is the scary part of his, draft profile, and what could he be if that isn't a factor in his game?
All right. So yeah, this is going to be the trickiest profile probably for this year because he's a huge forward, wicked skill. Think like Kirby Doc, but with a little more intensity to his game. Very, very similar traits in the sense that they're huge, not the fastest, but just so skilled, so smart, can make plays, can score goals. The package that he offers as a hockey player is you ask a lot of GMs, it's almost like he's made in a lab type of thing. You know what I mean? Except the thing he wasn't. We know this because he's got back problems. And
just made in whatever lab you were made in.
Yeah. But it's not a small thing. We don't know the extent to how bad the injury is and what the long-term ramifications are, but we don't have to go back too far to know how much this can derail a prospect. Caden Lindstrom, last year for Columbus, 4th overall. If you remember the profile we did on him, we were saying a lot of the same things. Huge, skilled, surefire top 5 pick on skill, but the back issue. How big of a deal is that? For those of you who haven't been paying attention to the Western Hockey League, Caden Lindstrom hasn't played a game since. He just started skating with the healthy scratches and medicine hat today.
Oh, it's pretty fitting that we're doing McQueen today.
Yeah, so it's a huge, very real risk. And if you're picking him high, you have to have a lot of faith in the physical, in talking to the doctors who have treated them, whatever you have to do into what the long-term prognosis is here, because he's a top 10 pick all day on talent. But how big of a risk are you willing to take? Now, relating this to the Red Wings, they're picking 11th right now as it stands. If the top 10 goes how we think it's going to go and McQueen's still sitting there, he's going to be the most talented player available. And with the Red Wings system being so deep, they are the type of team that can absorb the risk. Because even if it doesn't work out, it's not like their farm system is screwed, but the potential is huge. So they are one of the teams that probably could afford to take the risk. But again, you're going to have a lot of confidence in the background work you do to pick him.
Yeah, if you're at 11, 12 and you're looking at Roger McQueen, I completely agree with you, because you're then getting into a conversation of, we either think this non-McQueen player is absolutely a top 5 talent and shouldn't be here at 11 or 12, or we're at the level of, well, I mean, we're going to draft this guy because there's no one else really behind him that would be better. I get that that's the MO no matter what, but you're not really looking at a surefire top pairing, top line player at 11 or 12. In all likelihood, of course you still get him there, but the odds are a lot lower. So yeah, the risk is worth it because the Red Wings have such a strong pipeline and you need a game breaker. And that's what McQueen is if he's on the ice. Guarantee you this guy's coaches, the training staff, family, friend, whatever it is, they are going to be the most talked to of any other player in this draft class just because people are going to want to know, is this like a top 3, 4, 5 guy? Or is this someone who should scare the hell out of us? Because if he's on the ice, he's a unique combination of size, skill, tenacity. What are the questions about his game when he's healthy? Is it just like how consistently he shows up? There's, of course, different parts to his game that he's not a perfect, complete everything player, but there's enough there that it actually could be game-breaking skill if it's all put together. But, back injuries, spine injuries, scary for good reason.
Yeah, and truthfully, he may not even be there for the Red Wings. Like, he is 6'5", 200 pounds, and a right shot centerman. Back injuries be damned. GMs will absolutely roll the dice on a guy if their guy is not there at where they're picking. This is a tough one. This is a real tough one because if he doesn't pan out and never really reaches any amount of NHL success, like, right now is a really pivotal time for the Red Wings, especially this offseason in totality. I really like the player. It's just how much risk are you willing to stomach this year?
And even without the injury, there's inherent risk with this pick because the range of outcomes on this type of player in general, but him specifically, is substantial. Like, there is a very real possibility he's just Kirby Dach.
Yeah, he's not the greatest skater.
Yeah, and there are sometimes consistency and pace issues. I don't have as big a concerns with those as I did with Dach, but they're there. But he also has a talent. He could be Tage Thompson.
Yeah,
right. Like there's a huge range of outcomes here, and I mean, once you get outside the top 10, that's a no-brainer. But I think the big debate's going to be the teams inside the top 10. How much of that risk do you want to assume?
Yeah, for me, I'm looking at this talent all within if he's there in Detroit's range. If Detroit finds himself in the top, I mean, I get it, you're either like top 2 or 3 or not much else. But let's say they're at 6, hypothetically, then you start to ask questions because there's other guys there. We just talked about Jacob Ryan, and I think, Brad, you would lean that direction over Roger McQueen on balance. But still, like, this is your way of getting a top 5 or 6 potentially talent guy lower down, however that may work. I don't know if he is good enough where you trade up for him, but let's say you do your due diligence and you really believe enough in him. You're confident that he can play and that the back issues won't be career long. Do you trade up for him?
And just let Kaden Lidstrom go early in a very loaded draft, probably where a lot of people thought Zeev Buhim was going to go. So there is precedence in the short-term precedence that he could be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, I would move up if I was supremely confident in the back. I'm not, so I wouldn't. But if I was supremely confident, but I'm only probably going 3, 4 picks. If you're going up any higher than that, I think there's safer options with just as much upside.
Back injuries are he could have had any injury on the planet. The fact that it's a back injury is very, very concerning.
Let us know what you think about Roger McQueen, worth the risk or not, and definitely fits that bucket of this is a team like Detroit or any team lower down in the orders opportunity to get a high talent player who for one reason or another may be down the draft. We'll see. That continues our prospect profiles. We're going to be back with you with our overtime segment of this show, but first a break to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. Back after this. All right. If you're like us and coffee's basically the fuel that keeps you going, whether it's early morning podcasts, late night game rewatches, or just grinding through another rebuild, then you need to check out Coffee Cult. These guys are serious about coffee. They only use specialty grade Arabica beans from all over the world, and they actually work with their farmers to make sure every single bean is top quality. No joke, they inspect each one, and they won't roast anything that isn't excellent. The result is super flavorful and honestly superstar level coffee. And get this, they roast to order. So when you place your order at coffeecult.com, your coffee isn't sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's roasted fresh just for you, and then it's shipped out. That's as fresh as it gets. Their dark roast is a go-to. Smooth, heavy-bodied with notes of caramel and chocolate, perfect for cold mornings at the rink. Or try something a little different like the Sumatra with chocolate and brown sugar vibes. And they've got a killer lineup of single origin coffees from places like Colombia, Kenya, Brazil, you name it. Head to coffeecult.com, that's KOFFEEKULT.com, and use the code WWP to get 10% off. And if you spend over $49, shipping is free in the US. That's coffeecult.com, spelled with a K. Drink better coffee.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show, the bonus episodes, the giveaways, the Discord, all of that and lots more. And you allow us to do things like make this show bigger and better. You allow us to support the Jamie Daniels Foundation. We are still fundraising for our $10,000 match that Prashanth Iyer has put forward. That's going to continue through the beginning of this offseason in the draft. All in support of the Jamie Daniels Foundation. Go to wingedwheelpodcast.com/wingsmotb to find out more. All of that and plenty more. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Let's hear from our patrons. Lars Thorzel says, "Hey boys, the more I think about it, the more I think a scoring winger is our main priority. We really need a first-line scoring left winger to play with Larkin and Raymond so we can spread the wealth a bit down the lineup. I think part of why Larkin has fallen a bit scoring-wise this season is that he's running the only line that is a bit scary for other teams. That results in opponents putting everything into shutting him down." Goes on to say more, but the gist of it is, I think, correct.
Oh, 1,000% it's correct. We alluded to it on the show, but when they pulled Kasper off that line, like, I'm not going to go so far as to say it was like they were playing shorthanded every shift, but everybody they put there was not pulling their weight offensively with him and Raymond. You could see the struggle. So, yeah, again, Ehlers, Tavares, Marchand, Marner, you could pick any of them. They all fill that spot.
Lars mentioned Ehlers. What would a contract look like? I think Daily Faceoff, Frank had him at, 6 years, $7.5 million was the rough
I
estimate.
do that all day, and I don't think twice.
I think it's going to be more than that, though.
I agree. That feels low.
Than...
Like, with how quickly I would say yes on that makes me believe it is too low.
Especially with the inflated numbers. Do you go like a 7-year, $9 million?
9's probably pushing it just because of his age.
29.
If he's willing to do 5 or 6 years, I would consider something in the 8s. Anything longer than that, you're now not increasing the AAV. You might lower it a bit, but because you're giving him extra years into his mid to late 30s at that point.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think the contract Frank laid out was, I think 32 teams in the NHL would do that without thinking. What the Red Wings would do and what I'd be willing to do doesn't really matter because it all depends on who the bidders are. There's going to be teams who just throw money at things. And do you want to get involved and do you want to get super uncomfortable with some of these guys?
There's like last offseason, a lot of those guys who went, it's like, yeah, I'm not comfortable with those numbers. Ehlers is a guy who I've been looking at for a long time. Like, God, I would love if he was a Red Wing. And no disrespect to Winnipeg. And I know Ehlers now with the injury, scary over there, but he's kind of hiding in that market. I think he's one of the more underappreciated players in the league in terms of what he does and the kind of game he plays.
This is where Franz Nielsen pulls his weight. We need a Dane in that negotiating room.
Yeah, is that relationship still good? We didn't say too many bad things, Franz. Motown Seider says, "Sorry we're not in. Congratulations on calling the correct point total. It made me feel prepared and smart when talking to other hockey fans. Thinking positively, what was your favorite game of the year? 3 choices to consider. 1, Buffalo, where Cossa gets his first start and the shootout win. 2, Florida, where we went 4 for 4 on the power play against last year's champs and rookie Kasper put Bobrovsky on the bench. And 3, another Buffalo game, all those goals and all those penalties in the last 5 minutes."
None of those 3 immediately jumped out at me, so makes me think there's got to be another game in there that might be a contender. Those were all fun and sick. But the Florida game, if I'm not mistaken, was on the road. So that takes a little fun out of it. The Costa game was on the road. That takes fun out of it. The brawl and all the goals against Buffalo was at home. And that place was electric for that game.
The Rasmussen standing over Hughes was at home.
Yeah, that was sick. That was a fun one. I don't know.
I'll call the Rasmussen just because it's a picture we'll remember.
It's tough, man. Especially at the end of an episode, trying to recall the entire season and the memorable moments.
And
Not to say that there's a bajillion coming out at me, but...
No, this season's a little bit...
Seattle, where they just laid the boat to him in the first 10 minutes.
That's actually a really good one.
Because every goal was just like, at some point, like, they can't possibly still be going. And then they shoveled in 3, 4, 5.
And even Kane's, Kane, OT winner on the breakaway. He did that last season, but better. So you're really going to pick that
Which game
season?
was it where the nuns were in the crowd and he did the cross?
Oh, that was good. That was good. I think, was that
Ottawa? Yeah, that might be the answer because I think that was Ottawa, which is always fun to beat Ottawa.
That's hilarious.
Honestly, I marvel at your brain that can remember the handedness of players like going back all those years because I'm just like Evan. At this hour, I'm like, God, I'd be lucky if I remember my own name after this episode.
Yeah.
To be fair, the 2 games I'm talking about, I think were within the last 2 months.
Brad, that does not change a single thing, brother. The Dandy Man Can says, would you guys prefer adding a left shot to play with Seider like Gavrikov or a right shot like Pionk to play with Sherratt so we can put Ed on the top pair?
Entirely dependent on the contract.
Let's say both contracts are reasonable.
I
lean right shot. I think the Red Wings have more options to shore up the left side, even if it's not stellar. But if you can get a standout second pair or decent second pair right shot, I'm all over that.
I think that's the better for the short term, but I think I'd go for the left shot. One, it gets Sherratt off the top pair, which is going to help Mo, and that's no disrespect to Sherratt, but I really like Sherratt as a number 5 defenseman. I think Gavrikov, Seider would provide stability because let's call a spade towards the end of the season. You could see Seider was struggling. I don't know if that was just exhaustion or whatever. We've seen that Edvinsson, Johansson can be capable on that second pair. Plus, if you get a left side of, call it Gavrikov, Edvinsson, Sherratt, there's nowhere along the right side of that you wouldn't be comfortable throwing in ASP if that became a thing.
God, I would love to have Edvinsson Seider as the top pair. Just have 2 absolute horses every single night, just making life living hell for the top players on the other team.
Jan says, who will be the teams leading the amazing 2026 tank for McKenna? And how can the Red Wings profit from those teams trying to get worse?
You got to pick the team that fancies themselves good and then somehow trade for their first round pick, which isn't going to happen.
But like, could you offload a bad contract onto those teams to say, hey, you're going to get an NHL guy, but he's not going to win you a ton of standings points? And I mean, a conversation could be had for, a comfort type for the Red Wings.
Is Nashville bad or are they actually bad?
They're bad. I think that might be the one where they could see value in a comfort.
I'm not as out on Boston as everyone else. I still think they have.
Well, when McAvoy comes back.
Yeah. But if Swayman has another bad season.
He missed all of training camp and time to start the season, right? Like, I think the demise of Boston is here. We've witnessed it almost firsthand.
You're the first one to say it on record.
I mean, Chicago seemed very hot to trot to get good veterans around Bedard, and most of the veterans they brought in this year weren't good, so maybe they try again.
Islanders, maybe at some point are going to fall.
They need to get another guy in there that they can lock up to a 5 to 8 year deal.
We already have some of them. They don't even need to extend them. They can just take the last 2-3 years of this one.
Who would be the worst fit on the Red Wings to have to go over to the Islanders under the Lou Lamoriello?
Jonathan Berggren.
Berggren would play one shift.
Yeah, you're right.
He'd be traded before his second skate was off the ice of his first shift.
I don't know if he makes it through warm-ups. I think Lou would just watch him bounce around the dressing room and go, not here.
He'd shake his hand and then wave him immediately. Poor Jonathan. Dan DeVries, who started spelling his name phonetically for me, so thank you, Dan, and sorry I'm such an idiot, says, I think last year during the losing streak, you guys made a comment of something like, it's okay to be understanding of the result, but still be upset with how we got there. and then goes on to talk about, the minutia being mathematically eliminated with 3 games left to play at the beginning of the season. If you told him that, obviously you'd say that sounds right. But the fact that the 2 7-game winning streaks buoyed the team a bit out of lottery contention makes it a little bit difficult. The question is, what RFA offer sheet threshold would you be comfortable with giving up for the right RFA? And so I have them up here in front of me. Obviously, the top threshold for, I think this year is above 11.45295 as an AAV is 4 first-round picks.
I'm literally not doing that for
No. Not
anyone.
until the Red Wings are consistently making a conference final.
2 firsts, a second, and a third is the next one.
Who are the good RFAs here that would even be worth 2 firsts?
A first, a second, and a third.
I can't think of any good RFAs right now.
A first and a third.
That's that in the first, second, third where I start
For the right
becoming
guys,
engaged.
Yeah.
But you got to time that properly, because
Evan Bouchard?
you got to be confident that basically the thought process here is you go out, it's July 1. One of the many top 6 forwards we have talked about, the Red Wings land. They get a half-decent defenseman to plug in. They're now looking, going, okay, we think we're going to make the playoffs. If we offer sheet said player, that first-round pick definitely is not going to be in the first half of that draft. We're okay giving up pick 17, 18, 19, 20 in what's looking like a very strong draft. But you better be damn sure you're getting in the playoffs. Because if they offer sheet someone for a first, and that's their only move this offseason, it's probably a disaster.
Keandre Miller.
No,
You wouldn't offer sheet Keandre Miller?
not for first, not after the season he had.
Would you do?
Is
the
he a
second?
victim of the Rangers' terrible prospect development, though?
It could be. It absolutely could be, but I'm not willing to gamble a first on that.
It's fitting that JT Miller went from the Vancouver Canucks to Manhattan, which is just as dysfunctional right now.
Yeah.
Like everything with Calvin DeHaan and talking to the media after, like they have not known a dull day. It's been Broadway there every day.
Chris Drury tried to do the Vegas Golden Knights play, and it just blew up in his face.
It's like watching the Masters all weekend and then trying to do the same golf swing when you get out on the course.
Yeah, you're so fired up watching that. You're like, I'm going to go to the range. I'm going to grind it out. Your first shot is a hosel rocket. You kill the guy who's loading up his balls from the ball machine. He's 90. You can't even bend over to pick up the basket.
You laid up and still put it into the water. A Masters champion would never do that.
No, they would never.
Yeah.
They would never.
Oh my God. Mr. Kuzi says, which player are you most looking forward to seeing next year? Must currently be in the system. Who will be the biggest long shot answer? Oh, biggest long shot
Now,
answer.
is
for next
this
season?
on Detroit or in general?
On Detroit? In the system on Detroit.
The only one that I think I can say confidently that I expect to be on Detroit is Danielson.
Carter Mazur, depending on how everything goes with his recovery. I mean, now he's missed a lot of games. They might want to ease him in back in the AHL. You know, if that goes really well, I'd imagine he'd be up the first call up.
Now, my longer shot, which would have been my answer had Grand Rapids been allowed, is ASP.
Yeah.
I'm most excited to see him no matter what, even if he's in Grand Rapids, because he could be the most talented prospect in the pool.
Even longer shot than that, although not at the same part of the top end talent. Shai Bouillon, potentially.
Yeah, I'm a big Shai Bouillon fan, especially after watching him live. You can just, man, it's so much easier to see the hockey sense, and his is high end.
You're not wrong, but I still remember him
Also got ran over in that game.
stepping out from the boards in the perfect way to just get demolished. And I was like, oh.
That's why you got those growing pains in the AHL.
Yeah,
You do that in the NHL, you're in the fourth row.
everybody's a rookie at some point.
Yeah, he was only in the second row of that game.
Yeah.
RC Tendy says, realistically, what would you have to give up for Isaac Howard, and what would you give up? Where would he fit on the team short term and long term if he reaches his ceiling?
Oh man, that's a tough one because he won the Hobie, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. So he's coming in at an all-time value high, not a physical player. I don't know. I'm not giving up a first for him. Just too many risks there with, again, he's a one-dimensional player, but
Do you
oh
do
my
MBN?
God. I think that's where the conversation starts. I don't know if I do MBN, but you're in the range. Any Red Wings prospect above MBN's an immediate no for me. I think first-round picks are a no for me. In a perfect world, you're getting away with it for like a second and pick a good prospect who's not MBN. You know what I mean?
Mm. And remember, Tampa Bay doesn't have leverage here. Tampa Bay's going to want to trade him for something, but the team who gets Isaac Howard is going to want to know that he's going to sign, because Isaac Howard is, 12 months away less from walking right to unrestricted free agency. And so, think it fair or not, and I have my own feelings about this path for prospects and how it can burn teams, but a team's going to want to know he's going to sign, and they're not going to give up a second or anything appreciable if they don't think he will.
I don't know if this is a good comparable, but the first thing that jumped to my mind is the Ville Husso type move. They knew he was going to try and go to the market in some capacity. The Red Wings wanted to butt the line and get in there early, and they were able to sign him. That's kind of the vibe I get. It's risky, man.
I think there's a better comparison here. Adam Fox.
He
was like, I'm going to go back to my fourth year and become an unrestricted free agent, or you can trade me to one of the very small list of teams I'm willing to play for, which I think Fox's was literally the Rangers. But, Isaac Howard could be sitting there going, Dallas, Colorado, Florida, or don't even pick up the phone, right? Like,
yeah,
for all we know. And if you don't trade me to one of these three teams, I'm going back for my senior year, and I'm just going to sign with one of those teams next summer.
And you have to imagine Detroit would be on that list, or Detroit was never on that list for him, because being in Michigan State, he's going to be around Red Wings hockey. The Red Wings are going to be pretty familiar with him.
We need Daniela to do some recruiting here.
That's right. Yeah, come on. Okay. That's all for this episode of the Wind Wheel Podcast. We're going to be back with you at some point midweek, because that's going to interfere with the Red Wings 2 last games. So stay tuned for the timing on that. It could be Thursday, but we'll let you know what we do. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. The Red Wings are out. The content continues. We all need to take a deep, long exhale after what we just watched, which has nothing to do with hockey. Thank you all so much to all of our listeners spending your time listening to the Wind Wheel Podcast. We can't say thank you enough. A new listener, welcome to the show. A listener of old. Here goes another off season. We're going to do our best to make it even bigger and better than each successive one, although we do hope the off seasons are shorter coming up. To all of our Patreon supporters, we could not do this show without you, and to the sponsors of the Wind Wheel Podcast, we really, really appreciate you. Patreon.com/Windwheel Podcast if you want to support the show. And if you want to support us, but Patreon's not for you, just hitting subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, be it YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, and leaving a rating or a review, the stars, the thumbs up, the writing a review, tell a friend about the show. All of that does sincerely help quite a bit. And to our name level supporters on Patreon, it's all about you guys. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn, Brabham, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Carl, Brutina Nanoluski, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gimmer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight, Probert, Grand Rapids Gurley, Griffin God Creatives, Hatrick Sandin Pellikka, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jake Gollum, Jacob Turner, James McLean, a.k.a. Jambo, Jeff Pridemore, Jennifer Morris, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Mr. Kuzi, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Podgy, 713, R.A., Richard Perkins, Roy Dunk, Sam Bankson, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ortley, That's What I Appreciate About You, Tiger McDougal, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Wings Fan of Chicago, Eyes Are Playing Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Indy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, A.A. Ron, Albert Johansson, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Another Future Consideration, Baked Starfish, Bands and Maker Dance, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, C.E. Hayes, Chris Fulinski, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy. I asked my North Korean friend how it was there. He said he couldn't complain. James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Adobo, Jim, J.M. Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Chaotic Monkey, Kevin McCracken, Quaz. Is that a quote from a previous overtime? I think so. Linda Hall, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raitmond, Matt Keeler, Mitch Minier, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Ryan M., Sadin, Soderblom Worshipper, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Sandy P. Right Hand D, Shit in the Bed for Schaefer, Steven, Stopping an Islanders Game to comment, That Other Guy, The Hodeg, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings Fan, and St. Louis Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. I'm going to go get my trigger figure ready for my next year's master's application. Get ready for more disappointment.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.